How many of you were in Justin's class? A few of you. Well, I felt like he stole some thunder from me. But I got to thinking about what he shared. I guess maybe he took my lightning. He gave me some lightning. But I joined his class. I looked at the 3 different things I could look at, and his was on, what's it called, taking the Bible out of school, or putting the Bible back, or what was it then? Something like that. Putting the Bible back in school. And I thought, well, that's not really something that in our setting is really a danger or something that was a big, I didn't see that as being a big concern, but as I listened to him, I discovered, I learned some things. And as it really, it goes along with this topic a lot, and it overlapped a lot. So, if you were in that class, and we go over some of the same things, I think God wants us just to bring some of those things maybe back together. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Lee Fisher. My wife Sadie is here. We have 7 children. We're just brand new grandparents last year. So we're learning how to be that, and we're enjoying that. Originally, we moved in from Pennsylvania back in '97. We moved down to Lott, Texas. And that's where we've been ever since, except for spending some years in East Africa as missionaries. So that's my background in school. I have never been an educator. I've never been a school teacher. I've been an educator, put it that way. When I became a father, I soon discovered there's a lot of education possibilities and responsibilities that go with that. But as far as being a teacher, I've never been that. But I have made this statement that if there was such a thing as doing another round, I would check into that thing of being a school teacher. I have a high admiration for people that teach just their overall knowledge and the skills that go with school teaching is things that I would love to be able to have. So as far as being involved in school, I'm currently a school administrator in our school. I've served as chairman, I've served as secretary, I've filled quite a few hats in the school arena. I do go into school twice a week and teach a Bible class, so I patted myself on the shoulder a little bit when Justin was speaking but anyway, that's where I fit into our school arena. A woman walked into a jewelry store, and went up to the man behind the counter and said, I'm looking for a little golden cross. And so he reached in underneath his drawer and he pulled out this little 2-inch cross and gave it to her. She put it in her hand and she flipped it around a few times, looked at it, and then she asked him, do you have one of these with a little man hanging on? I don't know how that strikes you. But we live in a country, so-called Christian country, a country that was founded on Judeo-Christian values, but we're increasingly becoming heathen in our understandings, the society around us. Talking to a friend recently, and I don't remember how we got into the conversation, but he was talking about a person he was talking to. And in the course of the conversation, he brought the subject of Jesus. And the person, this is an American, this is not some foreigner that moved in or someone from another country that was visiting. This is someone that was, quote, born and bred in America. What we would see as just a common everyday American. And the person looked at my friend with a blank look and said, who is that? What are you talking about? This person had never heard of Jesus. And so, as Christian people, our work is clearly defined. Now, in the area that I live in is considered a Christian community. We have a lot of Baptist people. We have a lot of Catholics. People are well versed in knowing who God is, knowing about Jesus. But as time goes on, more and more people don't know what we're talking about. And so what do we mean here when we talk about integrating kingdom values in our teaching? To integrate something is to unite, to combine, and to make it part of. It is not this and this, but it's this. We call our schools Christian, and I wonder what part of our school is Christian? Is it what makes it Christian? Maybe you can tell me, what makes our school Christian? Is it the teachers? Go ahead.
Well, it's a focus on Christ. So what we're teaching our children has a focus back to God.
Okay.
That's what I think of when we say Christian day school, because I thought about that when I tell someone that, we send our children to our own Christian day school, and they kind of look at you, well, Christian day school has the idea that it's teaching about Christ.
Okay, teaching about Christ. Any more follow-up thoughts or other thoughts on that? Yes, sir.
The curriculum is Christian-based too.
Okay.
Not just the teaching around it.
Okay, so the teaching is, the curriculum is Christian-based. Yes, sir.
Is Christian middle Christ or something like that?
Okay, that's what the meaning is.
They're trying to raise people for Christ, right?
Okay, that's our ultimate goal, isn't it? That the products coming out of the chute are ready to do kingdom work.
It's pointing them in that direction, but it's more than that, it's leading in that direction. We're trying to move them to look that way.
Okay. So is it, this is all good. This is where we need to go with this. So is it necessary for us to even have this topic? Is that not, if that's the main focus, why do we need to have a topic about how to integrate kingdom values into this? Are we lacking something? Are we missing something? Or have we missed something that we need to regain? Dan?
Well, one thing we just well acknowledge, we have an adversary. There are two kingdoms. And unfortunately, the world does have an effect on rubbing off on us if we're not careful. So therefore, we need each other to encourage each other, and inspire each other, and to help each other.
Okay, so Daniel mentioned that we have an adversary. We have someone that is fighting against us. And our enemy is 100% anti-Christian. Right? And so he wants to, one of his tactics is to divert our attention. Right? So that the main thing is no longer the main thing. Okay? So we understand that our school is a Christian school. We know what we have this picture of what we want to see coming out of the school. But as we go along, we get so caught up in which algebra book to use, which curriculum, and we get so involved in the nuts and bolts that we get so concerned about how we're organized that we forget the main thing. So let's make sure we keep the main thing as we run our schools. Now, as we talk about kingdom values, again, the possibility that we may be running our Christian schools and that first and foremost is not kingdom values is a disconcerting thought. That we may be missing the point. And I told you I spent some time in East Africa. I spent some time in Kenya. And the Kenyans have bought into this idea that in order for them to come out of their poverty-stricken condition, education is their answer. And they have bought into that so heavily that I personally know of families that when they had to choose between buying food for supper or paying school fees, they chose school fees. And their children literally went without supper that night because they wanted to pay the school fees. Because in Kenya, if you don't pay your school fees, you get sent home. What do they call it there? Chased. They call it chased. And in my work as a missionary in a rural area, it was a common occurrence that in the middle of the morning you would see these children walking home. And they were ashamed to go home. And some of them would actually hide in the bushes. They didn't go home. They hid in the bushes because they didn't want to be known as a child that got chased. But their highest value was education. And so education was king. Because somehow when our children become educated, then we can get out of this cycle of poverty and living hand to mouth. And what they didn't realize was actually making the situation worse. And what was grievous to us is many of their children they took on that vision that education was king. And when they reached the ages where they should have, some of them were members of the church at this point. But when they reached the time when they were able to graduate from high school, then they wanted to go to the cities and go to college and try to further their education. And they had no money to do it. But it was their focus. And we can get caught up in that, maybe not to that extent, but our struggle would probably be more on the side of preparing our children so that they can make a dollar in knowing how to run businesses. And so we need to have them learn how to do bookkeeping and all those things for the purpose of running good, solid businesses. And we fail to teach them the real values of the kingdom. So before we talk about these values, the why and the how, and I think this topic was supposed to be more on the how rather than the what and the why. But before we talk about the why and the how, we should talk about the what. What are we talking about when we talk about Christian or kingdom values? What is it we're talking about? Interesting. In our local paper yesterday, and I was going to bring a clipping, and I just discovered I left it on my desk. But there's a man, he calls him the cowboy poet, and his name is Jim Cathy, and he writes something in that paper once a week. And the heading above this week was how to instill values in our children. I said, well, this is along the lines that I'm thinking too. So I read it. And he had a list of 12 values that we need to teach our children. And this is from a cowboy perspective. And I meant to bring them and read them to you. But some of them that I remember was along the lines of remember your family and be honorable. That was one of the values that he would instill into our children. I wish I could get more of those. But what are some of our values? What are some of the values that we want taught and exemplified in our schools? What are we talking about? Do you know what these values are? What are values? I'll tell you what values are. Values serve as a guide to our behavior. Values are basic and fundamental beliefs that guide and motivate actions and attitudes. It is the motive behind the action. Values are what we want to be when the action stops. So what are some of these values that we're talking about? When the day is over, when your high schoolers exit the school, what do you want them to take with them? That's what we're talking about, right? What is some of the values that you want them to have as they leave your school? Can you name some?
Honesty.
Honesty, okay? Honesty?
Love, maybe for, in particular, one that's augmented in my mind is where the older students, all of them for that matter, look out for a child that's in a wheelchair or one who's disadvantaged.
Okay. Okay. Gabriel's saying love, and then with that, how would you put that into a little nutshell here? Where they are looking out for those that are disadvantaged. Showing compassion. Okay. Okay. Now, in relation, I have a little incident that I saw happen that in relation to what Gabriel said about looking out for the young ones. Years ago, and I say this with sadness, this is a part of our school, but this happened in the school that, this is years ago. This happened in our school. We had a blind boy there. He was completely blind from birth. And one day I saw something happen at the school that troubled me. And I saw a younger student take the hand of this blind boy, and he was leading him around the schoolyard, and it just rained the night before, and at the edge of the driveway was this big water puddle, and he took him right through that. What kind of value is that? And I wondered, what is that boy thinking? I mean, it was totally intentional, and it wasn't in fun. It was kind of, well, it was in fun, yes, but is that how? We don't want that, right? We don't want that. So that's an example of a bad value, perhaps. So what are some more? Compassion, we had love, we had watching out for younger people at a disadvantage. What's some more you're thinking of?
I was thinking servant-hearted, maybe that's along the same line.
Okay.
Being a servant, not just because of money or whatever, but kingdom value servant.
Having the heart of a servant. Okay.
You know, piggyback on what he just said, you know, being ready to serve, you know, coming out of high school at the age you're ready to, you know, focus might be on trying to get a job to earn a lot of money. Well, you should be trained to be ready to perform service.
Okay. Okay. There you go.
Being faithful.
Faithfulness.
Or I should say, not a quitter. You start something, then when it's too hard, you don't give it up.
Okay. 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 Persistence.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Yeah. Okay. How about patience? Is that something, is that a value one or two and a half? In my preparation for a sermon here a couple of weeks ago, I forget even what my subject was, but I came across this definition for patience, and it stuck with me, and I'll share it with you. This definition of patience went like this. It's temporary. It's willing, temporary dissatisfaction. willing, temporary dissatisfaction. And that means that it's not where you want it to be. But patience allows you to be willing to let that issue the way it is until it can be rectified. So that's what we want our children to learn too, don't we? It's just to learn how to be able to be patient and to. Oh, I remember as a schoolboy, I didn't necessarily enjoy school. I wasn't the smartest fellow in school, but I wasn't also the one that had the hardest. But I just thought it looked like such a long road ahead till I would get to where I could graduate. It just, when you're in the 5th grade, it looks like it's way up there. Patience. And that's what 5th grade was one of the hardest years for me. And I remember my teacher talking to my parents about it. She threatened to flunk me. We called it flunking back then. I don't know if they still do or not. She threatened to flunk me if I don't somehow shape up. And that scared me. I didn't want to do that because that meant another year. And patience, just keep on keeping on. That's something that we need to teach our children. Anyway, there's more self-discipline, courage, a giving spirit. So these are some of the values that we want coming out of the products of our school. And so now we need to figure out how does that happen? Because we don't have a subject like we do arithmetic. We don't have a subject that's courage. And now all we do is we talk about courage, and you build this. But rather, we're talking about values that are intertwined and that are somehow ooze out of everything we do. From the devotional in the morning until the last song is sung, wherever you close your schools. That in between those times, this whole thing revolves around these kingdom values, because this is really, really important to us. And so we need to figure out how all of this works. Everyone has values. Even a bank robber has values. And so sometimes recognizing and identifying our values brings purpose and helps us to prioritize. So I hope just going through that little exercise has helped us to do that. I told you that your values determine your behavior, and it affects the way you make decisions. So let's just use this for an example now. Suppose, let's say you're a young man with a family. You have, and we don't have that many of those here, but this is the example I'm giving. And so you've got 5 children. You're a young man. Your children range from the age of maybe 2 to 13 years old. And you're struggling in your occupation, trying to make ends meet, trying to pay school tuition, buy groceries, pay the electric bill, make the car payment, and the mortgage payment, and it's just an ongoing struggle. And so you have this job offer. And this job offer is along the lines of your interests, your skills level. And the pay that you're being offered is you've never made so much money except in your dreams. And it looks like a golden opportunity. The catch is in order for you to take this job, it's going to require at least twice a month. It's going to require you to travel and be gone from your home at least 2 nights of that week. Most weeks you're going to have to commit about 70 hours in order to do this job properly. So now you make a choice. What decides how you make that choice? How do you work through that? You need the job. It's going to make your life a lot easier. But the price that your family is going to pay is also in focus here. what decides how you fall in that decision? Which side you fall on that decision?
Kingdom values, man.
Kingdom values, but you know we need to provide for our own. If I have this job offer that's going to take care of that, then that needs to take care of it. If I don't take care of my own, I'm worse than an infidel. So what kind of values are we taught? What values come into play here? Yes, sir.
There may be some that, I'm thinking of a man who has 3 special sons. Maybe something like that. The mother's taking care of him no matter what he does. I had an employee like this. And the ministry called me and paid for me to give him a job because he couldn't make the money he needed to care for those 3 boys.
Mm-hmm.
But it required some diligence on his part. I don't know about so much away from home, but there may be situations where it could work, but I think that there's certain stages of life that's too expensive from the family standpoint.
Okay. Okay.
Talk about values, there's
Okay.
eternal values on the
Okay. 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 He's on to something. You gonna add some more to that? Now, Dan, you weren't all wrong. I was just. Go ahead.
Along with that, it comes down to what do we value? Are we valuing our financial status more than our family? And you can't put a price tag on taking care of your family and taking care of your children or being with your family if it's always be gone like that. You have to weigh that into those values. So what are the repercussions from that?
Okay. Okay. So what happens with a 13-year-old son if his daddy's gone from home that much? Does that, have you seen that? Do you have any idea what that might look like or how that might play out? I see some heads nodding. So, in this situation, what are you going to recommend this man to do? What values are most important?
The brother back here mentioned something about the ministry, offering this man a job or, helping him find. Is it wrong to go ask advice in a situation like that? Yet I think we need to have values ourselves, When you're my age, your children, my children's age, you look back sometimes. And if I would have had a job that I would have been working with my 2 younger sons more, I think maybe different. I cannot change that. God is not limited. God can still work. But those are things that, and it wasn't that I was gone nights. I was maybe late, home late a lot of nights. To the young fathers, consider those things. If there's any way that you can have a job where you can work with your children, be there for your family, don't choose another job that makes more money if you're able to make ends meet.
Good advice. Good advice.
You quoted the verse that if you don't provide for your family, you're worse for it. If you don't provide for those of your own, you're worse than an infidel. Well, looking at that situation, what are we going to provide? Are we going to provide spiritual nourishment, spiritual food, or are we going to provide physical?
Good point.
At what point are we worse than an infidel?
Okay, good point. Good point. Good point.
I'm not gonna say, really within your means, there's certain things you can't afford. Maybe that'll have to wait till later. But can you somehow make it through these hard years where, I've had some of that experience.
Yes.
I know it's not always easy, but it's, when the community or church, they pitch in, they help where they can, and all of a sudden I've had that experience, and I've been very grateful for that.
So your values will help you in making decisions in this kind of a situation. If money has a high value, and your interest is in somehow getting ahead in life and building a wealth bank, then it's an easy decision to take the job. Okay? Family will somehow struggle. Mama will take care of them. But if family is of a higher value to you than building wealth, then you're going to say, well, no, wait a minute. Look at the cost to my family. This isn't going to work. And so it becomes, the decision is not so difficult, but it does speak to your values and how you make decisions in those kinds of things. Your values determine how you make decisions. That's just how it is. Yesterday, I take on too many. I take on too many things. I'm a generous person, and I have a friend that had asked me. He's building a house, and he had asked me if I could help him. I got some plumbing experience. I did plumbing for a number of years, and he asked me if I could come help him hook up his water lines. He's getting ready to move in his house, and he never hooked his water lines up. So sure, I'll help you. So I figured Tuesday I'll do that. And I had this other project going back at the shop where we need to do an expansion project, and I needed to build a septic tank, and so I had contracted that out. And he called me on Wednesday. Well, Tuesday didn't work for me to hook up these water lines, so I told him Wednesday. Well, then Wednesday this man showed up with a backhoe, and he wanted to move the septic tank. And so he knew where the water lines are and everything, so I had to stay there to help him. So I called Mike up, and I said, Mike, I'm sorry it won't work today. Can I come tomorrow, which is Thursday? So he said, sure, that'll work. So then come Wednesday evening, I had a dilemma because the septic tank man wasn't finished, and he wanted my expertise to help him the next day. And I had set Thursday aside to prepare for this. And I still hadn't hooked up my friend's water lines. What do you do? You just don't have enough time to do all of it. And I knew that if I come to this unprepared, I'll make a dunce out of myself. And I knew my friend Mike was desperate in needing his water lines hooked up. So do values come into play here? They do. They do. So, needless to say, you see up here, and I'm at least somewhat ready. But, I prayed about it. I asked God, well, God, how do you want me to organize my day so that I can fulfill the obligations that I feel that I have? So, as we go into the school arena, school administration, as you think about values, you think about the things that we really want to highlight and we want taught in our school. How do those things play into school administration and how they make decisions? What kind of decisions do you make in your school that causes you to go back to your values and make certain decisions the way you do? Can we have a little discussion about that? How does this work out? What are situations in your school that you've had to work through? And there's some school board people here, right? Yeah, sure. Okay, so do you have something? What are some of the decisions you make in the course of a year? Let's just talk about that. Is it Marcus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, most adult days. I was thinking about the hard decisions for me are the teacher's clothing, dress. Which direction are we going?
Okay.
Do we allow pull over this and skirts and blouses, our school, that's getting to be kind of an issue. I hate clothing. I hate shopping for clothing. I don't want to deal with clothing where people stop trying to innovate. Just
Keep
You
it
know
the
what
way
I'm
it
saying?
is.
Yeah, it's just, what are we working for? You know, that gets to be one of the challenges for me. Because I just really don't want to mess with it. It's so personal.
It's a highly personal
It's a highly
issue.
personal issue.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Background specific, and
So in that situation, how do you work through that as it comes to your values? What kind of values come into play?
one of the things is thrift or purchasing power.
Okay.
Clothing's so cheap, we can buy new outfits. So I think the values for our family is we don't buy any clothing. If you don't need it, don't buy it. Wear out your old stuff.
There you go. You don't need 40 pairs of shoes.
No.
Okay. Some more decisions that school boards make.
Are you talking about a church school or is it community
It's a
school?
community school with a church. There's a lot. It's all church. Most of church people. But there might be. There's a Baptist family.
Sure.
A couple that don't go to church very much.
But clothing makes statements, and they're also influence, and so that is an issue that needs to be addressed if you don't have just your own church families there. We've run into some of that.
I'm talking about teacher clothing.
Oh, teachers. Oh,
I'm
okay.
talking about staff.
Staff. Okay.
Children's one thing. Printed T-shirts and that was kind of clear. You don't want the
Okay.
Trump 2020.
Okay.
But I'm thinking of the staff. You know, with why we hire from different Mennonite backgrounds.
Okay,
and
okay.
trying to-
Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. Do you hire teachers? Anybody hiring teachers this year? Okay. What kind of what do you look? How do you decide on who to ask? What for values are we looking for here?
A Christian.
Christian? It's pretty big. Go to the local Baptist seminary and say, hey, we need a couple.
Baptist.
Anabaptist? Okay. Okay. Anabaptist Christian? Okay.
You can see how a person lives if he takes his Christian life seriously. And you-
Okay.
the
Lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle, yes.
Okay. Now, we don't always know that right off the top if you're hiring somebody you don't know.
We try to keep him from a local church.
Okay. Okay. All right. So it's easy to in September you have all your teachers together. You have your team, but it's easy when you don't have any needs to say, okay, the next time we hire a teacher, it needs to be this. This is what we're gonna look for. All right. Now next year, September, you're one teacher short. Now what do you do? And you have somebody that said they'll come, but she doesn't have this, and this. She has these two, but these three,
What are you talking about?
some of these values.
Okay.
Maybe it's doesn't have a history of being compassionate. Maybe doesn't have a history of respecting authority. But she's willing to teach, and we need her. What do you do? How do you? Hey.
I've given some young people a chance, but you have to be honest with them. You have to tell them, or ask them. You always pose the question: say, do you have some challenge with this, that, or this, that? Can you explain from your perspective? And some young people have never been leveled with.
True.
People aren't willing to do the hard thing.
True.
So I'm always a little sympathetic for young people trying to get into teaching because I have a little soft spot in my heart. So I probably am on one side of your seat.
Sure.
So you need someone else.
Sure, and I completely understand where you're coming from. You're saying somebody that's willing, still flexible, that can say, hey, look,
and
I'm willing to work on these issues.
And if you bring it up to them and begins how to relate to that, that's the answer, right?
Is it?
You know.
But you still need her. What
Well, I'm
if,
saying if they respond right, like they say, you know, I never thought of that, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that, I would still like to teach. Some of our best teachers, you know, like, I don't know if any of you know, I don't know how to say it now, it's Kenny Ocker. Kenny Ocker taught for years and years in Lancaster. He was kind of a whippersnapper young fellow, and he wrote the whole upper grade curriculum for the history books now. I mean, he was not teacher material when they hired him. We couldn't believe it, you know, the youngsters. But he turned into one of the biggest blessings there in that school. So I think maybe being honest with them,
true.
then you'll feel what their feedback, and you'll know what's in their heart.
But what if it's a negative response?
Well, then you know,
Okay, why?
because it's the heart.
Okay, it's the heart. Okay. It militates against the values of your school, right? And you don't want that influence to come in. So what are you going to do? Are you going to compromise? Are you going to do without a teacher? That's sometimes when the rubber meets the road. We really get tested. We really get tested because we know we want this, and we have this this is our Constitution, this is what we have agreed on, but now we have a need that can be met if we fudge a little bit here. Just tell the parents to homeschool.
That'll teach you.
Anyway, I hope you're getting the point there. Teachers, what kind of decisions do they make in the school day that need to fall back on values?
One reason for the important values, what are they going to do with a child that cheated and was dishonest?
Okay. And it's their little brother.
Or a
Little brother.
Or a
Little
little
lie.
nephew.
You what?
Or a little nephew.
Oh yeah, that's maybe even more that way. Okay. Do you just say, well, so let's sweep it on the rug? Or are you willing to deal with it and say, look, this militates against the values of the kingdom. If this continues, this child won't be ready to do kingdom work, right? This needs to be corrected. Okay, those are the kinds of things that, and so in our school, it's everything that we need to maintain that big picture and not get caught up in the details. Well, we have a present need, and so therefore the need is greater than it sort of fudges everything else. Let's just take care of this. We'll deal with the fallout later. But let's keep the big picture that we are producing, not trying. We are producing kingdom material. That when our children come out of school, now whether you're 8th grade or high school, whatever, I'm not sure where you're at, but at least the high schooler is at the age where let's hope at that point they made a decision for Christ. And that they're ready to move on into life, not just to get a good job, but to be somehow useful in the kingdom of God. And so if we just allow needs and pressing things to make our decisions rather than the values that we hold dear. Okay, just a few things here is how do we do this in a school setting where our, we use, is reading, arithmetic, writing, is that secular or is that spiritual? Kind of secular, maybe, sort of like that. It's skills that we need, okay? Maybe it's a bad question to ask you. But how do you in your everyday teaching, when you're teaching math, when you're teaching reading, when you're doing penmanship, or whatever, how do you include kingdom values in those things? We say, and if you were Justin's class, he brought that clear that we don't believe that Sundays is the day for church and religious things, and then Monday to Saturday is the day for us to do business. our Christian experience just follows through. Right? And our school's the same, right? Or is school time for education, and then the spiritual thing is over here on Sunday? That's not what that's not what this class is about. This is about this flow continues. This flow of information, this flow of influence continues. So how do you do it in teaching these things?
Well, maybe in like, just kind of off the top of my head, but like in math class, maybe we can talk about how this would apply and say it's, as an example, the SALT program that King has, how does this math work out? You know, I'm just thinking of integrating other values, kingdom values, while we're teaching math.
Okay?
Maybe there's missionary stories or
Okay.
something like that on the side of English, I don't know.
Okay? Okay? Someone recently said that God is a mathful God. You know, in Acts, he added to the church. And, you know, when I went to school, we didn't call it subtract, we called it takeaways. And God takes away our sins. And he multiplies grace to us, grace and mercy. So, anyway, just a thought. All right. One of the things that, when I was in, I think it was the 4th grade, we as a school memorized the book of James. And we also had penmanship. And our teacher, for our penmanship, we would write down we would have to hand copy our memory passage for the week. Killer idea. You know, when you write something or something happens up here, is that true or false? That's right. When I prepare my messages, I don't usually paste and copy verses into I always type them out. I either handwrite them or type them because when I do that, it ingrains it harder into my mind. It's easier to retain in my head. So this teacher, she would, I didn't think it was brilliant back then, but as I thought about it yesterday of some of the experiences I had, I said she killed 2 birds with 1 stone. She had us, it aided us in our memorization, and we did the penmanship at the same time. So there's an area where you're not wasting any extra time, but instead of writing some story about Jill and Sally and that, you were writing verses in your penmanship, and you were exercising that way. That's an example. Do you think of anything? We're almost finished, aren't we? What time do we have to quit here? What time is it?
There's a clock back there.
And we got till 20 after?
25.
Okay, then we're almost done. Okay. Anything else? Go ahead. You were a school teacher, right?
Can't help but think of the old phrase, more is taught than taught. And if we want our children to have kingdom values, it all flow through, we need to be one with the kingdom values.
That's exactly right. If we hire teachers that don't espouse those values, what do we do? All right? School board, school administration, if you don't handle the situations that come and you handle it with justice and with fairness and kindness, that plays in. You know, it starts from the school board the whole way down to the 1st grade or the kindergarten, whichever you got. Is this thing of and I realize our children aren't Christians per se, but the young ones need to be mentored and taught. You don't take a blind boy through a water puddle, and you don't cheat, you don't steal. Those things need to be drilled into their heads.
The backside.
Do what?
Drill into their backside.
Exactly. You know, I've witnessed a school where values, the values of the church didn't carry through into the school. And I watched it play out. It wasn't pretty. And I can tell you story after story of the students of that school that came out of that school and where they are today. But they're not where I want my children to be in terms of the kingdom of God. Time's up. Thank you, Ernie. All right. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added. Do that first. Go ahead, son.
On that illustration that you did, I'd like to pose a question. What, did they use a Christian curriculum?
Yes.
All right, that's where my thought, if we're trying to integrate, or we are integrating with a, we call Christian material, is that enough? No.
No, it's not. That's right. We're just getting started. But that's that's the important thing about the staff that you have. And in that situation, I should say too much here, but I know one thing that happened in that school. There was some bad language out in the playground. And the teacher was informed of it. You know what he did about it? So, anyway, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your